Okay, I hope this is on the right channel. We're about to find out. I'm about to refresh the page and see if it's going to work. But essentially, and I know you can hear that by the way, I'll explain that in a minute. Essentially what we're going to be doing is I'm going to talk about a load of accessibility things because I recently joined a group on Facebook, which is this. This is one of the posts I did a while back. Well, it's not really a while back, it was a few days ago, a few weeks ago. And the response has been amazingly overwhelming in such a way that I really can't explain half of the questions that I'm getting asked without making a video and actually talking about it, because as things are, really, I'd have to write a massive essay because we're talking about Linux and stuff that a lot of people haven't even heard of. Essentially what we're going to be doing today is going over some Facebook comments and some things like that, and I wanted to explain and show some of them off. So without further ado, let me just get Facebook up and I'll go through them one by one. In case you're wondering what's going on right now, I'm using my iPad
View 18 previous
to
replies. View 8 David. View 8 previous reply.
look at all of the stuff. Okay, so David Moore commented, "Hi, you're describing NVDA.
It is free and open source, and NV Access is the charity company who sponsors it and keeps it all together. NVDA stands for non-visual desktop access. They could really use some help, because one of the developers took a job with Mozilla. NV Access makes NVDA free for all, and it is easy to download. Joseph Lee has done tutorials for free that are incredible. NVDA could use a lot of developers who are ready to make this free open source screen reader open to the professional world. Most companies are afraid of using open source software. We want to change that. I work a lot with NVDA, and there are tons of add-ons that are produced by people all for free. Please PM me, because I would really like to tell you about the NVDA project, because you are describing NVDA to the T. Have a great one. Michael, Thursday at 10:00.
So, that message there, okay, I replied to this, so if any of you who are watching who's followed this thread, you'll know this, but I essentially said, you just wrote the exact comment I would have wrote if somebody would have asked for a screen reader, because yes, I use NVDA all the time. I don't have a Windows box set up right now, so I can't really demonstrate it, but that's a thing, and I love it, and stuff like that. This project, however, if I can find the GitHub page, this is the blind installer, and I haven't started any code yet. I've literally just opened this page here, and the blind installer, the whole idea of the project, as you'll read on my Facebook page, is to develop a piece of software where, say you're brand new to blind and visually impaired, you've just turned blind or whatever, something's happened, I don't know, you're probably completely frustrated and have no idea how to use a computer. You download this, or a sighted person downloads this, runs it, it starts up some kind of, probably console-based, because if it was console-based, then it'd be easier to implement speech without having to open an actual screen reader and stuff like that. I don't know. It starts up some stuff. It asks you a bunch of questions, and you answer to them. For example, are you a new blind user who has no idea what they're doing, or are you a existing blind user who's been doing this for a good 10 years, like I have now, and just wants to install the software and get it all set up? And then, if you're a new user, it would walk you through the process of, well, do you need a screen reader? It'll tell you what a screen reader is. It'll install one, probably NVDA, because I love it. And then, it'll do things like, if you're on Windows 10, it'll automatically install the add-on, I can't remember the name of it, that makes Universal Windows Platform apps more accessible for NVDA. Do things like that. It'll walk you through all the preferences and go, do you want to echo words out? Do you want to have keys read out? Do you want this to start a login? Do you want this to start on the login screen? All the basic settings, and it would also install, say, I don't know, maybe you don't need a screen reader but you need a magnifier, or maybe you need both. It'll install one of those for you. I haven't really decided which one yet, or it might just enable the built-in Windows one, because the built-in Windows one's pretty good in my opinion. Of course, it would all be free software. It wouldn't use any proprietary software. I hate proprietary software, plus you'd have to pay for it, and I don't like installing free trials on people's computers, because that's essentially bloatware, and we all hate bloatware. It would install, say, the Webby suite. If you come here to, make a new tab and go to webby. What is it? Is it org.uk? Yes, this. They have a massive suite of applications, including a PDF reader and a clock and a lot of BBC iPlayer stuff, and it could install some of this or all of this automatically for you, and hopefully get you going, because, for example, Or it might even install Adobe Reader and set it up with the accessibility profile, because you can do that. Things like that. It's essentially a piece of software to walk a new user or an existing one who just wants to get up and running really quickly. Maybe I can create like a this is going way off into a massive tangent, but maybe you could create some kind of profile with the software, and then you just load it into this software and it does all for you. You don't have to adjust settings individually and stuff for new users who need to set up a new system. So that's the idea with that.
Nicole Tedesco replied, "Oh, David Moore, do you work with the NVDA project? I feel a legit fork of my own coming on. Ellipsis. Thursday at 10:30.
Nothing much to say really, but I do like this. I want community feedback on NVDA. Obviously, NVDA needs to improve. I think it's light years ahead of proprietary offerings that you spend thousands and thousands of dollars or pounds or euros or whatever on, and really there isn't that much better about them than NVDA. I think NVDA is better. It's lighter weight for one. The interface is very simple. It's just a little menu.
David Moore replied, "Hi Nicole, I will officially by April. Right now, I am definitely learning my way around JIT. That is so awesome that you mentioned JIT and you have one coming on. NVDA is very powerful, and I use it to access much more than JAWS. You can use the mouse with it and everything. Take care, Nicole, and message me back, and let me know what you do about the JIT coming on lol. Thursday at 10th, Cap D."
Self-explanatory.
Nicole,
I'm not going to read
Nicole
these next two because I know they are.
Nicole Tedesco.
All of these.
David Moore replied. Nicole
I don't
Tedesco
need those.
replied, "David Moore JAWS is an old code base. I can feel that. Its lifespan is limited short of a complete rewrite. I was considering switching to NVDA given the frequency of application crashing when using JAWS." Thursday at 10:56.
So I've never used JAWS, I should point out, but I completely agree with what you're saying here, because it NVDA, as we'll discover, is written in Python, and yeah, it's probably not a very good idea, as Nicole points out further down. But JAWS has been going since the mid-90s, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but it needs a rewrite. And I know NVDA has been going for, 12 years now, but still a lot newer, using newer technologies. JAWS is... I don't see Freedom Scientific or Dolphin software, except for maybe Easy Converter for Dolphin. I don't know. I don't see them sticking around for much longer, to be honest, because it's a complete shambles, man. You don't want to pay 800 quid for something that's not really that good, and then you can't upgrade. So if you upgrade to Windows 10, or maybe you are forced to upgrade to Windows 10, Microsoft, then this happens, and then you can't use your computer because you need to spend another however much money to upgrade to JAWS 13 or whatever. Actually, that was Supernova. I don't know, I hate proprietary software.
David Moore replied, "I will help you and send you the links to download it and everything. You will love it. There are a few add-ons you need to install to it after you get the main NVDA program installed, but it never crashes. It only takes up a fraction of memory on your computer that JAWS does, has many voices you can add to it for free, and it can really access a lot that JAWS does not. I will help you. I will send you the info later today, because I have not gone to bed yet lol. Go NVDA lol. Thursday at 11:02 a.m.
Not much to say there.
Nicole Tedesco replied, "David Moore, I just downloaded and installed it a couple of days ago. What is its keyboard layout compared to JAWS? I just go through learning about half of JAWS's keyboard commands. How much do I have to reinvest in learning a different keystroke set? Heck, I need to learn the keystroke set for Visual Studio yet, programming. I look forward to reviewing the add-on list you have discovered. Thursday at 12:11 p.m.
Well, I don't know if this is technically feasible, but it should be. I think NVDA should probably implement some kind of quick, easy to set up keyboard mapping where you can just say, I have used this product before, JAWS or whatever, Window Eyes, Supernova, heck, Narrator, and it will auto-match as many of the keyboard shortcuts as it can to that. Obviously, that would be quite a bit of work, but that might be something that the blind installer could actually do if I can figure out a way to do it. I don't think it should be that hard, because I'm sure you can adjust key bindings in NVDA, and as long as I know where the config file is, I can edit it manually. It doesn't really matter.
Michael Buckland
Oh, and in terms of Visual Studio, that's probably what's going to be written in. I don't know what. It might be C#, it might be C++. I'll decide when I've actually got a mind map going and some actual ideas. So, yes.
Michael Buckland replied, "Okay, ellipsis. You just wrote literally the exact post that I would have written if anyone was looking for a way to access a computer. I use NVDA every day. It's written in Python, I think, so I'd probably be able to help. But the software I'm building wouldn't be a screen reader. It would install one, probably NVDA, for the user. Guide them through the preferences and show them how it all works. It may also install a better magnifier, PDF reader, etc., depending on what the user asks for. It's targeted mainly at the newcomers to the blind computing scene who have no idea what they're doing, or for old-timers like myself to get everything running very quickly. And yes, I love and completely understand the benefits of open source. I run Linux every day as well. Thursday at 9:33 p.m.
Now this is where the conversation really started to pick up, because Linux, and a lot of people don't know about Linux. If you don't know what Linux is, essentially, if you know what Windows is, it's an operating system. It is the thing that runs your entire computer. It's a system that operates your computer, and you may be familiar with macOS, which is what I'm running macOS. Which is another operating system that's designed to run on Apple computers, but Linux is another one. Now, the way Linux works is it's open source. Now, if you don't know what open source is, it essentially means that all of the code is freely available and can be distributed and modified as long as you give credit for free. And this is great because it's basically a community effort to create an operating system, and it has come a long way. It's now how old is it? It's 27 years old now, and I consider it perfectly usable as a desktop operating system. Maybe not if you want to do gaming and stuff, but blind and visually impaired people doing gaming, it doesn't happen that often. I mean, there's audiogames.net, check that out, it's a good forum, but, yeah, you know.
Michael Buckland replied, also, David, I know this is a big ask, but could you...
We don't need to cover that, I'm just talking about how I can get into it.
Nicole Tedesco replied, Michael Buckland is likely not written in Python, but probably written in C++, while providing an extension mechanism in Python. Thursday at 10:35 p.m.
Well, we see
Nicole Tedesco replied, Michael Buckland, the code repository is likely on GitHub, where all the cool kids are hanging out these days.
Yep.
Kevin. Michael Buckland replied, I don't know, but either way, I'll definitely learn if I have to learn C++ after avoiding it for so long. Heck, even C, I'll do it if I can make the future better for blind users like ourselves. I'm sick of companies charging what is sometimes thousands of pounds for software that in reality, NVDA is roughly the same or better than. Thursday at 10:37.
Basically said that.
Nicole Tedesco replied, Michael Buckland, I just sent an email to the NVDA folks asking them how to contribute. Thursday at 10:45 p.m.
And then I said, we'll see what comes of it.
We'll see what comes of it.
I wonder if anything has come of it. Nicole, if you're watching, let me know, please, because I don't know.
Rodney Shane Jackson replied, I believe that the add-ons are written in Python though. Friday at 1:20.
Yeah, the add-ons are
Rodney Shane Jackson replied, David Moore, I use NVDA all the time. Love it, used to be a JAWS user, but NVDA is the only screen reader for me. What is the add-ons you suggest? I do wish NVDA would have a more selection of antivirus programs it would read. I currently use 360 Total Security, which is a free antivirus. Friday at 1:27 a.m.
Major problem. I am sick of companies making antivirus that is totally non-standard and not accessible. What is wrong with Windows Forms, or WPF, or Universal Windows Platform apps? I don't get it. Why do you have to write your own graphical toolkit just to make a antivirus program? Malwarebytes is the most accessible, but that's obviously a malware scanner, not a antivirus. But it is the most accessible because I believe it's written in Qt, and Qt is accessible on pretty much all operating systems.
David Moore replied, here are the add-ons I use. Windows 10 App Essentials, Weather Plus, Virtual Review, Insert...
That's it. Windows 10 App Essentials. I don't use many add-ons. Well, I don't use any add-ons. I haven't dug into them very much yet. But Windows App Essentials, I'm assuming, helps to make all of the Windows apps more accessible. And then there's Weather Plus and Golden
David Moore
Cursor.
replied, here are the add-ons I use. Windows 10 App Essentials, Weather Plus, Virtual Review, Insert Symbols, Speech History Review and Copying, Speak Passwords, Say Product Name and Version, Resource Monitor, Remote Support, Place Markers, Lambda Math Editor add-on, Golden Cursor, Enhanced Aria, Day of the Week, Clip Speak, Clip Contents Designer. There are over 100 add-ons like that. Many add-ons make NVDA work much better in programs, like the add-on for Skype app. Friday at 3:58 a.m. One reaction.
There you go. Let's I know there's a lot. I want to write my own. I don't necessarily know what for. Maybe this keyword mapping idea. I don't know if that's already built in. I'll have to check.
David Moore replied, if you have Windows 10 as your OS,
if you have Windows 10 as your OS, you can just use Windows Defender as antivirus software. It is very good.
And it's built right into Windows 10. Friday at 3:59 a.m.
I disagree with that entirely, because if you watch the PC Security channel, who is a security researcher that I completely trust, he will show you that Windows Defender is not great. And yes, it is great accessibility-wise, and there's a few features like controlled folder access that are quite good for protecting against ransomware, but Windows Defender has never been good by anyone's standards. So if you want an antivirus, please don't go with that. I mean, at least get the free version of Malwarebytes and run a scan with some kind of frequency. I would advise getting Avast, although it's not accessible, but at least it'll alert you if there's a threat and you can delete it yourself. Yeah, I don't really know where to go with this. Anybody who's watching who writes antivirus software, I know there's none of you, but if there is, please make it accessible.
David Moore replied, thank you so much, Nicole. NVDA is being upgraded to Python 3, and there is a lot to do. They really need people to create written transcripts of the audio tutorials. Let me know what happens. Friday at 4:03 a.m. One react.
Okay, I'm going to address the written transcripts thing first. I am totally going to do that. I'm assuming the tutorials are on the website, and even if I can't find them, which I'm sure somebody will send me a link to them anyway, but even if I can't find them, I'll write my own tutorials on how to get NVDA installed, because this is probably going to come as part of this blind installer package that I'm creating, and there's probably going to be a separate user guide showing how to do it all manually in case you want to get into it a bit more and want to be able to customize it a bit more, and especially if you want to be able to tweak the code, you know what everything's doing.
David Moore.
In terms of upgrading to Python 3, as Nicole Tedesco points out, assuming that's how you say it, because that's how VoiceOver says it, well, yeah, Python. I love Python, okay? I write a lot of things in Python, but they're really short-term projects. Like, I wrote a fairly complicated program to add a sidebar to Linux, but I don't really care if it stops working. And I do think that the Python developers need to stop doing this thing where Python 2 to 3 and half the people who've learned Python 2 now need to go to Python 3, but it's got a different syntax and a couple different things. You have to put brackets around print statements, and modules aren't capitalized the same way. Yeah, it's okay to do once, I think, but please don't do it again, Python, because I love you. I want you to stay. Code readability, stuff like that. I mean, I've never used Braille to develop, because I find that very cumbersome, because multiple symbols mean one thing, and if you switch it to computer Braille, then stupid computer Braille just doesn't work really that well, So it's a very touchy subject. I really hope Python doesn't do something weird with Python 4, for example, because I do like Python. It's going to make NVDA much easier to get into when I want to start developing for it, especially add-ons, because that'll be obviously easier than trying to tweak the code base. But
Screen dim.
whatever happens, I don't want it to go the way of Lisp and Fortran, like we've
David Moore
pointed out.
replied. It is on JIT. David Moore replied. Yes, Michael. NVDA is mostly written in Python and a little C++. Python is very easy to learn, and they already have tutorials to help one learn it enough to work with the NVDA code. Friday at 4:05 a.m.
Right, that's a good thing. I forgot about that, actually. I'll have to go and check those out.
David Moore replied. It is on GitHub lol. Friday at 4:06.
It is on GitHub, I'm not surprised. It's at github.com/nvaccess/nvda, I think.
David Moore replied. If anyone would like to join the main NVDA email group, here is how to subscribe. ++ subscriber groups. IO for the NVDA add-ons list. ++ subscriber group. IO these two lists are very high traffic, and your question will be answered in minutes. You could dive right in and talk to the main people in the project. Friday at 4:14 a.m. David Moore replied. Michael, I love your idea to have a package including everything to get a blind beginner started. Oh, I want to learn about Linux. I love the idea, and I would love to know which distribution you use and how Orca works for you. Friday at 4:15 a.m.
Right, this is where we get into Linux. And this is where it gets complicated, because Linux is not as simple as just downloading something and using it. There are these things called distributions, and I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but Linux distributions are essentially different versions of Linux, because Linux itself is just what's called a kernel. It's just the thing that tells the hardware what to do based on what the software above the kernel tells it to do. So, that's a very high level, by the way. So, there are various different implementations of this kernel that do different things. For example, Ubuntu Mate. You'll have seen in my previous videos quite a lot. I use Ubuntu Mate. I love it. It's accessible out of the box. However, if you're going to go with Ubuntu Mate as a distribution for accessibility, I will tell you something right now. And that is, any Ubuntu derivative right now, I'm pretty sure, has some sort of glitch where in the live CD, which a live CD, essentially what it does is instead of booting your computer off a hard drive, it boots it off a CD and loads a full desktop off a CD or a memory stick or a DVD, and pretty much anything you can boot from. And it's a live environment that anything gets destroyed essentially when you shut it down. So in that, there's obviously a link to the installer. I'll check my notifications in a minute, by the way. There's obviously a link to an installer, but the screen reader on there, for some reason, will crash as soon as you start it, so you'll probably need sighted assistance to get Ubuntu Mate installed. However, once you've done that, it is a much easier task, because as soon as it's installed, you take the CD out, you restart, you boot it up, and it works fine. The screen reader all works fine. There's a few crashes here and there, but as I've said further down this page, as long as you can press Alt F2 and type Orca and press Enter, O-R-C-A, by the way, then you can get it back up, and it doesn't happen often enough for me to get annoyed at it, really. So, that's Ubuntu Mate. Now, what I'm going to show you in a second is you can dual boot Linux with Windows. So, when you start it up, you choose whether you want Linux or Windows. And there's two different ways of doing that. One is a virtual machine. I'm getting emails and notifications and everything. One is a virtual machine, which I'm about to show you in a second, and one is dual booting, which I can't really show you, but I'll show you how. I'll talk about the concept.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore, I am a fan of Python as a primary language for a system. Something like NVDA should have a C++ core with language of choice wrappers. Python is having trouble evolving without completely changing the language, which leaves the risk of building a future of dead legacy libraries quite high. It reminds me of what happened to Fortran. Moreover, Python is well suited to continually running closed-loop services like NVDA would be. Rant off. Friday at 7:07 a.m.
This is what I was pointing out earlier about Python changing stuff, and it's just I understand what Nicole's saying, because she's got 35 years in the software industry, so I trust that she knows that this is essentially just a resurgence of an older language. I'm pretty sure Python was started in the early 90s, and it just started to gain popularity recently, probably because of the Raspberry Pi and projects like that use a lot of Python code because it's simple and easy to read, and I don't want to see it die off, because if it dies off, NVDA dies off, and I don't want NVDA to die off.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore, that said, upgrading to Python 3 is a helpful step that must be done. It is unfortunate that Python was the initial language of choice because this will have to be done again in the coming years. By the time all is said and done, Python will end up looking like JavaScript without curly braces, which implies the question, why not have just adopted JavaScript Node.js in the first place? Friday at 7:10 a.m.
Yeah, I understand that. JavaScript's actually quite a simple language to program for, I'm pretty sure. I still think Python's easier, but yeah, I don't want that to happen. Just please don't let it happen.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore, where on GitHub? Friday at 7:11 a.m.
We're on GitHub. She actually found this later, but I'll tell you right now, it's github.com/nvaccess/nvda, if I can talk properly.
David
Conference
replied,
call,
"Hi,
I
Nicole.
don't care.
I will ask people on the NVDA list about what you said. This is way over my head, so I will get a discussion going on there, because they are very much in that phase right now. They want to know where NVDA is going in the future. I hope it is okay to tell them what you said. They will not mind at all. Friday at 9:24 a.m.
Yes, I was on the NVDA mailing list. I never posted anything. I was on it for a while, though, but the problem is, I kind of need it. I need to get a separate account, or I need to work out how plus filters and stuff work on Gmail to really be able to take advantage of it, because I unsubscribed after a while. Not because anything on there was bad, just because I got sick of having 10,000 unread emails every day.
David Moore replied, Hi Nicole, Joseph Lee is one of the head programmers in the NVDA project. He is so exhausted, and he might have to take some time off. Another reason why is because he has run into a major problem with the upgrading to Python 3 experience. Oh, we could sure use your expertise on the list, because all of this is over my head. I am just learning a little Python so I can get involved sometime this spring, maybe April. Whoa, we have to talk. This is getting really good. Have a great one. Friday at 9:32 a.m.
Yep, this is getting into... Well, essentially, I completely agree with David. Everything David said there, everyone needs to do.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore, I really would like to help. I figured that would happen with Python, which is why I consider it a dead language. I know this old language has suddenly become all the rage lately, but its lifespan is limited. There is an awful lot of legacy being built out there. It also reminds me of AutoCAD's initial dependency on the Lisp language for scripting. It has taken decades to mostly wean new users off of that one, yet it still persists for almost 40 years now. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Friday at 12:54 p.m.
Oh, Lisp. The only way I'm familiar with Lisp is with Emacs, assuming it's the same Lisp. And I've never written a single line of Lisp, and I don't want to. These old languages are, like Nicole says, completely dead. I really don't care about them anymore. And that'll probably happen with Python in 20 years if this doesn't... if it isn't stopped.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore, I will be glad to add my 2 cents at any time to the project. I have 35 years in the software industry now, along with other endeavors, at all scales of software development from embedded, to desktop, to servers, to enterprise, robotics, mathematical analysis, to neural networks and even a little quantum computing theory. Friday at 12:55 p.m.
The first part of that, yes, I will too. I'll definitely try to add my 2 cents. Obviously, I'm getting started here. I mean, I don't know much. I know I could probably write an NVDA add-on without much trouble, but I don't like, for example, I was going to contribute to Orca a while back, but I really don't want to have to touch the code base and break it all. And I know it doesn't matter, because I'll just not submit it, but it's to the point where you wonder, how do you actually get started with all these projects, because they're so diverse and so big, and it's split over hundreds of files sometimes, at least tens of files.
Rodney Shane Jackson replied, David Moore, yes I do have Windows 10. I believe 360 total security protects better though. I feel that a blind user should be able to have other options as to what they want to use as antivirus just like anyone else. Add-ons that help us with other apps are great. But companies need to make software more screen reader friendly. Friday at 5:29 p.m.
Ditto, completely agree.
David Moore replied, Hi Nicole, I have an NVDA GIF link for you for an NVDA add-on, and you can subscribe to the NVDA developers list. Here is the info. This is from Joseph Lee, one of the lead developers for NVDA. As for your friend, please have her email me with any questions, as well as have her CC info@nvaxis.org for further details. Or you can ask your friend to join the Daredevil mailing list. Here is the GIF link. This is for an add-on. https://github.com/vd/emoticons. With a link. vd/emoticons. Emoticons enables the announcement of emoticon names instead of the character representation in NVDA. github.com. Saturday at 4:54 a.m.
That's cool, by the way, that add-on. I need to download that. I need to download all these stupid add-ons. And I need a Windows box to do it on, because I've got one, but I've like totally screwed up the installation and I'll have to reinstall. Don't have time right now, though. I've got one at Mam's. I've got loads at Mam's, but I'm at Dad's right now.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore, I think I found the NVDA code base here. https://github.com/vaxis/dar with a link. Vaxis/
Yep, told you. nvaccess/nvda on GitHub. Work.
Nicole Tedesco replied, in the space I am in, robotics, there is a growing Python code base out there. While this user or that enjoys writing their scripts in Python, and the young college kids continue to advocate let's use Python, I am a stickler about keeping it out of our core technology stack. Instead, I am happy providing Python bindings for user scripts, and also JavaScript bindings, net bindings, C++ bindings, and Java bindings. The binding layer can be maintained separately, and even my others, but the core technology stack must remain in control of the owners/caretakers of the application. Saturday at 12:09 p.m. One reaction.
Yeah, makes sense. I hope that if Python goes the way of the dodo, that something will step up to provide something that's as readable as Python, though, because it forces indentation, and you don't need stupid semicolons and curly braces everywhere. And I agree, they're helpful, but Python supports them. I don't know about curly braces, but, like, I know Python supports semicolons if you want to put stuff on one line. So it's not like it's not like I'm advocating for not having semicolons. We just need to make them optional. I don't see why we need them all.
David Moore replied, Hi Nicole, I think why so much Python is used is because NVDA can be kept up to date quickly to meet the changes in technology. It works with apps way before JAWS does. However, like you said, there is a scary trade-off. Python may not always work, and at some point, NVDA will have to be redone in a way, so this is a tough situation. NVDA core was first done by Mike Curran in 2006, so that was 12 years ago. I don't know what the answer is. You did find the code on GitHub. Good job. Whoa, maybe you could talk with some of the developers and talk about some slow changes from so much Python. Have a great one. Nicole. Saturday at 10:50. Michael Buchan replied.
Hey, I didn't want to do that. Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Maybe we should write I don't know. Somebody could probably make the core C++ these days, or something like that. And C++ is... I mean, it's harder to learn than Python, but it's very common, so it's not that hard to learn. And if we did something like that, it would probably end up being more stable, and then build Python on top of that, which means all these modules can be switched out, essentially, for different languages. If anything happens to Python, and you can just switch to Node.js or whatever.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore you too. Saturday at 11.
Yep.
Michael Buchan replied, wow, 3 exclamation.
Here's my massive reply. Okay, this is a lot of stuff, and I'm going to go through it all.
Michael Buchan replied, wow, 3 exclamation marks. So many replies. So, where do I start? Linux. I use Ubuntu make mainly, although I also use Debian with XFCE. If you want more info, either check out Blind Computing at blindcomputing.org or look at my YouTube channel at https://www.youtube.com/channel/approx2ty0n0mlx0qvhig. Orca works great and is roughly similar to NVDA, but for Linux, but it does crash a bit and I'm not sure why. As long as you can press Alt plus F2 and type Orca though, it's not a massive issue. The GNOME, Mate, XFCE, Cinnamon, only with Linux Mint so far, and Unity desktops are fully or mostly accessible with Orca. If you don't know what any of that means, ellipsis, get Googling. Because I can't explain it without writing an essay. Python. I've been messing around with Python for about 5 years now and I love it, mainly because it forces code readability and is simple and intuitive to learn, at least from my standpoint. I completely understand what other people have been saying about Python and hope that the developers realize this and take it into account, as I don't want to see this language go the way of Lisp or Fortran, but we'll just have to see. Makes NVDA real easy to get into, though. GitHub. Oh, I know about GitHub alright. The code for blind computing's up there, but please don't look at it if you want to see a good, stable, robust solution. I just like Bash. Okay. I've also started lots of other projects on there. NVDA ends. Wow, I've never really explored this angle of NVDA before, although I knew it existed. I've never had time to download any and have a look, not to mention finding any that would actually be helpful to me. I'll have to try some out soon and read some documentation to see if I can write my own. Thanks for all the feedback, ideas, links, comments, etc. I've read and taken into account all of them and I'm so glad I was able to start some conversations. With a link, redirect.
And that endpoint is Very important. I have read all these. I will be reading all these. Now let me go over all this stuff. I've talked about Python, so I'm not going to go over that. I just realised I haven't even mentioned blind computing yet. If you go to blindcomputing.org, it will redirect you, because I'm using CGI, to the homepage. And if you can see, you will see that this is the homepage. It's a very simple page. I made it specifically for screen reader access. It's very easy to interact with. Now, there's a lot of stuff on this website, from devices to operating systems. I have got a lot of my videos that I've done in the past on this YouTube channel on my website, specifically to point out accessibility features of different Linux operating systems. So if you don't know what Linux is and you want to get into it, then check those out. Another important thing, though, is the fact that... Okay, so let's get into some Linux stuff. I'm going to come over here. That's OBS. I don't need OBS. Right. I'm going to launch... It's not open yet. I'm going to launch VirtualBox. And wait for it to load. Now, this is a piece of free software. It is also open source, I believe. It's GPL, so it should be. That lets you run a computer inside your existing computer. So if you're on Windows or you're on a Mac and you want to run Linux, you can do this. And essentially, it creates this environment that the operating system you're trying to virtualize just thinks is a computer, but it's actually running inside another computer. Now, there are benefits and drawbacks to this. A lot of the benefits include the fact that you can run both at once. You can run the operating system in a window, and I'll show you right now. I press enter here. Starting Debian Marty. I am going to put it in full screen mode. And let it go. Here we go. Now this is in full screen, but it doesn't have to be in full screen. You can see I can press this button here, and it becomes a window, and I can do other stuff and have this running in a window. So that is a massive benefit. The downsides are, well, it uses up a lot of RAM, because, for example, if you have 16 gigs of RAM like I do, and you set the VM to 4, then you've used up a quarter of your RAM just with this virtual machine, and your host operating system can't get it back. So if you're doing something intensive, you won't want to have a virtual machine running in the background. There we go. It's in. I'll log in. It's a bit slow. That's another thing. It will be slower because your processor is emulating a processor. So it's obviously not going to work that well. And on this Mac Mini, which is from 2012, it isn't as good. Where's VirtualBox? I can't find it. What's going on here? Oh, this is VirtualBox. Okay, if you can see, I know you can't hear what I'm doing, but if you can see, you'll know that my Debian is up. I'm going to quit it because I don't need it. But that's one way you can run Linux and Windows or Mac simultaneously. Another way is to dual boot. Now, the advantages of this are you're not running two operating systems at once, so it doesn't bog down your system, especially if you've got an old one. I've got a load of computers that are more than 10 years old at this point, and virtual machines are extremely slow on them. But if you use dual booting, then it would just be as fast as Windows, or possibly faster, because I think Linux is quite a bit more optimized, but that's then personal opinion. It will run fine, and it's using all of your hardware. So if you've got 16 gigs of RAM and you boot into Windows, it'll have 16 gigs of RAM. And if you boot into Linux, it'll have 16 gigs of RAM. It won't be limited. And same with processing time and things like that. The downside is you can't run both at once, because if you dual boot and you want to, say you boot into Linux and you want to run a Windows application, well, you got to reboot and close all your applications. Now, I don't really find this as an issue, because... Hello, I'll read that in a minute. I don't find that as an issue, because a lot of the time, the reason that I have Windows on there is because it came with the computer, and I want to keep the product key, and I want to keep it just in case there's like a tiny bit of software that I need to run, like Rufus. Rufus is a great... I don't actually know if this is for Linux, but it might be. I know Etcher is. But Rufus is a great program for making DOS USB sticks, and also for making a lot of different things. There's utilities like that. SD formatter. I know you can get that for Mac, but, you know. I keep Windows on there, but only really just because there's these tiny pieces of software I need to use, and there's really not that often I need to use them these days. Linux has come so far. That's completely useful for me, so I don't see that as an issue for dual booting, but you may, especially if you're coming from the Windows world and you use Windows all the time, and you don't want to have to reboot. Now then, let me read that comment first before I
Friend request. Notification.
go any further.
Leela Lorraine Miles Beltran Blinden.
Oh, hold
Selected.
on a minute.
Notification. Select. OZM. How replied to your comment on a post in Blinden OZM. OZM.
I'll have to go back.
Selected. Rebecca Lawson. Selected. Navigation. Navigation. Tab. Nicole Tedesco replied. Michael Buchan replied.
Really?
Michael Buchan replied. Also, David. I know.
Also, David, I don't
Nicole
care.
Tedesco replied. Michael Buchan, it is likely not written in Python.
This is scrolled way up.
David Moore replied. Wow, Michael, I would really like to talk to you.
Wow, I'd really like to talk to you. I'll really
because
get Googling because I really want to learn more about Linux.
I have definitely heard a lot about Ubuntu, and also Debian. A sighted friend of mine loves Linux. I will ask him which distribution he uses. I really want to learn about all of the different distributions, and why there are so many lol. Have a great one, and hope to talk soon. I have definitely heard of Bash. I will check that out. There are some math reading add-ons for NVDA that you might be interested in. I will find out more about Orca as well. I like how I can use an add-on called Golden Cursor for NVDA. Are you unable to move the mouse pointer, and find out, in pixels where the mouse pointer is on the screen, and many other features are in this add-on. I have gotten a great picture of what and where things are on the screen. I like to visualize everything, because I had some sight until I was 15. I never got to see a computer screen, so I love to know where everything is on the screen, and how a sighted person sees things on the screen. JAWS does not have this capability nearly as much as NVDA. There is so much I want to learn, and I am just getting started by meeting so many great people on email lists, and these Facebook groups. I wish you the best, and hope to talk soon. Have a great one. Michael, yes?
Okay, there's a lot to talk about here. First of all, very random question, just I pointed this out. I know David probably doesn't even care if I answer this, but why is there so many distributions? Because people are scratching their own itches. Since all this code is available, if you personally find that the networking stack of Linux is too cumbersome and annoying, then you fix it yourself. But then, maybe the Ubuntu project doesn't want to accept that because it'll change a bunch of stuff. Well, you go and make your own distribution. You are free to do whatever you want. There is the Sonar Linux project, which I may go and download it here in a minute, which is the accessible version of Linux, for example, and that is dedicated to being accessible, not just for blind and visually impaired, although that's its number one focus, but for everyone. But it doesn't do anything else. You wouldn't run Sonar Linux on a server. There's a different one. Ubuntu Server, or plain old Debian, or CentOS, or Red Hat. There's a load of different distributions. Anyway, Bash. Bash is the born-again shell. It is essentially the programming language of Linux. I'm pretty sure you already know that, but that's what blind computing is written in. Whenever you go to blind computing, it's running Linux commands to get that site working, and I need to do some tweaking because it's not running that great. Well, maybe one of these days I'll make a video showing how this all works, but it's running on a DigitalOcean server, and it's not set up very well. Right now, if the server crashes, it's just not going to come back. So, yeah, things need to be changed, but for now it's working fine, and there's not much traffic to the site, so it doesn't matter.
David Moore replied. Wow, Michael.
Let's see. I didn't talk about desktop environments. Now, desktop environments are essentially the modular part of Linux, because Linux is very modular. There's your desktop, your GUI stack, your networking stack, your kernel, loads of different things. And desktop environments are essentially what you interact with on a day-to-day basis. And there's multiple ones, unlike Windows, where there's just the Windows desktop, or Mac, where there's just the Mac desktop. There's a lot. There's GNOME, which is what Orca was originally developed for, so it works the best on GNOME, but I don't really like GNOME, so that's why I use Mate, which Mate is essentially a version of GNOME, because a while back, in 2011, I think now, maybe 2010, GNOME switched to GNOME 3 and dropped GNOME 2, and completely changed how their desktop worked. So Mate is what you call a fork, which is just basically somebody took the existing GNOME 2 code and kept it alive, so that people who want the traditional version of GNOME can use Mate, and I'd much prefer it to the modern version of GNOME. GNOME 3 is, I'm not going to get into it, but that's why I use Mate. Then there's XFCE, which is the
X-Forms Common Environment,
and it's not as accessible. For example, the desktop icons and any of the file management isn't accessible, which is why further down I pointed out, if you want to do Linux and you're blind, you should really, really learn as much command line stuff as possible, because if you don't, then you're kind of left out in the dark, especially if you're on a system that doesn't really like to be
Screen dim.
accessible, like KDE and something. Terminal's way better if you learn how to use the terminal. You can get around, first of all, you can get around faster anyway because of tab completion and things like that, but also if you're running on a desktop where the file manager isn't accessible, and I don't know about you, but I think the file manager is kind of a key component, then you can get around. And then we have other ones. There's LXDE, which is the lightweight X11 desktop environment, which, as the name implies, is supposed to be very lightweight, but that's not accessible at all as far as I'm aware. There is KDE, which I don't even know what it stands for. It's just the K desktop environment, I think. And it is not accessible at all. It's pretty bad, actually. So you have a more limited set of options when you come to Linux and being blind and visually impaired, but I would personally go for Mate. There's Unity as well, which is Ubuntu's old desktop, but they're moving away from that, so I would either go for Mate or GNOME. XFCE, I've used it all the time. You can go with it if you want, but I would say Mate instead. So yes.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David, more the nice thing about Linux/Unix is that the entire presentation layer can be replaced. Many presentation layers have been developed over the years, including text-only ones. Don't expect all of your favorite apps to be running there, however. Yesterday at 8:41 a.m.,
That's basically what I just said, and another point that she raises is, don't expect all of your apps to be there. Depends on what you mean, though. If you want iTunes, no, it's not available. But if you want a music player that can also read iTunes files, that's available and accessible. It's called Rhythmbox. You won't have Windows Media Player, but you will have VLC, which arguably is way better than Windows Media Player anyway. So there's a lot of functional apps. You just need to drop the status quo and, I guess, get used to them. So yeah.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David, more the nice thing about Linux/Unix.
Oh, that's the other point. Right, it's very modular. I touched on this. You can replace the entire presentation layer, which I don't know exactly what Nicole's talking about here. Maybe she means X11 or Wayland or basically what's presented to the user, which would be the desktop environment, but all of those can be interchanged.
Nicole Tedesco replied, developers love Linux, I think, because it is free and it has hardly changed much since the early 1990s, leading to developer-level stability and a well-understood foundation. Moreover, its core software can be explored openly at the source code level, leading to even more understandability. That, however, does not always translate into end-user satisfaction. Yesterday at 8:45...
Completely agree with all of that, except I would add that, yes, developers love it because it's old and stable, but they also love it because of the new features. For example, I don't know if any of you heard of snap packages, but essentially what they are is universal packages that can be installed on almost any major and a lot of minor Linux distributions, and they can be installed on any one, so you don't have to make a package for Ubuntu, and make a package for Debian, and make a package for Red Hat, and make a package for CentOS, and make a package for Arch Linux. You can just run them all with one snap package, and that is a very new technology. It's also allowing containerization where apps can't access things that they're not allowed to, and you can explicitly tell them that, and the developer can set it up in such a way that it asks your permission to do things like that. So snap packages and flatpaks, which are a opposing technology that kind of does the same thing. I'm not going to get into the differences, and there's app images, which are the same thing. But there are a lot of new features coming to Linux that people are liking. GTK3, as opposed to GTK2, is way better when it comes to high DPI, which I know none of the blind community cares about this, but sighted people will love the fact that when you have a really high resolution display, it's much easier to read and stuff like that. GTK3 is better on the whole anyway, I think. And yeah, I mean, that's why developers love Linux. There's a lot of Git was developed for Linux, for the Linux kernel, by Linus Torvalds, the creator of the Linux kernel. So if you really want to get into Git, Linux is probably a good idea. Also, a lot of developers probably like Linux because it works on servers, and a lot of developers need to use servers, whether they're developing a cloud application or building a website. It's probably a Linux server anyway, so why won't we just make our apps on Linux?
David Moore replied, wow, how do they keep Linux up to date to work with the latest web content and web applications and the like? Yesterday at 9:40...
Right, there's a lot of... Hello,
like,
I don't want to do that, but I will like it, actually.
Nicole...
This brings up an important point, and that's package management. As I just discussed, there's snap packages, which you package up your software and either put it on the store, or it's a file that you can download from the internet. But the way Linux traditionally handles packages, and the way that a lot of people still use it, snap packages are only just about catching on, is with a package manager. And an example of this is aboutt, APT, which is on Ubuntu and anything based on Debian, because Ubuntu is actually based on Debian. And essentially what it does is you give it a package name, it goes and searches it's sort of like a cache of, well, it is a cache, that's stored on your local machine that you can update of all these package names and what they actually are. So then it goes and gets the files that it needs for this package, and it downloads them, and then it puts them all in the right places and runs the right commands, and you've installed a piece of software. Now you can do this from the command line, apt-get -y install Firefox, whatever, but there are a lot of tools to help do this without using the command line, especially if you're new to Linux. GNOME-software is a good one. The Ubuntu Software Center, while old, still works fine. And then, of course, the venerable Synaptic Package Manager. That's SYNAPTIC Package Manager. And if you just install Synaptic, it will be there. And it's installed on a lot of distributions already. And it's very simple. It's very easy to access using the screen reader, which is Orca. And if you don't want to use the command line, then definitely use Synaptic, because it's probably the best one for blind and visually impaired users. Of course, if you're on a different distribution, there's going to be different things available. GNOME software is available on practically all of them, because it's designed to work with different package managers. Like, Arch doesn't have apt-get, it has Pacman. Yes, Pacman, package manager. And Fedora has Yum and DNF, which are both package managers, but they're not apt, they're not compatible with apt. But GNOME software helps make that a lot more transparent. Synaptic only works with apt. But anyway, I think this is kind of a bit too rambly, so we'll move on.
Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore, the nice thing about Linux Nicole Tedesco replied, David Moore, web content is generated at the application level, not the operating system or plumbing level. Trust the OS for security, not content generation. Yesterday at 11.
Essentially what you're saying right here is that web apps doesn't matter. As long as Firefox is getting updated for Linux, it can run them, because it doesn't matter about Linux running web apps. Actual apps are a different story. You need specific features in the kernel and things like that to be able to run them. Snaps weren't even possible until, about a year ago, I think, with some more updates.
Nicole Tedesco replied, application and web servers are constantly evolving independent of operating systems. Yesterday at 11.
So yes, essentially what we're trying to point out here is the modularity of Linux. The fact that everything is independent.
Rodney Shane Jackson replied, David Moore, I am currently learning to use Linux. Which basically it is just Ubuntu that is more screen reader friendly, which Orca is the screen reader. You can install it on a virtual machine using VMware, or you can also install it on the computer as a secondary OS. On one of my computers I have it set up so it either boots up into Windows or Linux. You can Google the Linux project to find out more info. Yesterday at 1 p.m. 2 reactions. 2-finger double.
So, he's mentioned the virtual machine thing there. VMware, in case you're wondering, is just an alternative to VirtualBox, but it doesn't work on Mac, so I use VirtualBox. In terms of Linux, now I'm pretty sure, although I haven't looked this up, that Linux was actually merged with the Sonar project, which is why in my later post I pointed out that you should go check out the Sonar project, because Linux is essentially, as far as I'm aware, a dead product right now. I'm pretty sure it's actually lost support, because I think the last version was based on 12.04, which was released in April of 2012, if you haven't worked out already. And that lost support 5 years after it was released in April 2017. If it's 14.04, then yeah, technically it's supported, but you're quite a bit out of date. So I would go check out the Sonar Linux project, or just download Ubuntu Mate and get someone to install it for you. You'll be way more up to date. Ubuntu Mate isn't just made for blind people either, so a lot of other features that possibly wouldn't get implemented into things like Sonar, because no one really cares about them from a blind and visually impaired standpoint, will get implemented, and there'll be really cool features in Ubuntu Mate. So yeah.
David Moore replied, really, Rodney, I have heard a lot about Linux, and I would really like to install it on the same computer as Windows 10. Oh, I will have to definitely look into that. Thanks a lot. I did not know you can install the Linux OS on the same computer as Windows. Have a great one. Yesterday at 2:08.
This really applies to any operating system. A lot of operating systems will let you dual boot. Pretty much every Linux distro will somehow let you dual boot. Any ones that are based on Ubuntu and use the Ubuntu installer is the easiest, because there's literally just a button that says, it pops up, it says, multiple operating systems have been, or an operating system is already installed on this computer. Do you want to erase it and overwrite all your data, which will obviously just put Linux on there, and it will delete everything on your hard drive, so be careful. Or, do you want to install Linux alongside it? And essentially what that does is it splits your hard drive into two equal parts. You don't have to make them equal, but it's equal by default. And it puts Linux in one of them, and Windows in the other, and Obviously, that means you won't have as much disk space, but you can run both at once. And there are drivers, for example, Linux can already put files on a Windows drive, so if you run out of space, you can always just put stuff in the Windows folder, in the Windows operating system. Windows and going to Linux is a bit harder, but there's definitely ext4 drivers out there that will let you do things like that. But yes, dual booting is possible on pretty much any Linux distribution in some way, and in Ubuntu, it's just a radio button away.
David Moore replied, I see. Nicole, which browsers can you use with Linux distributions? I will just have to get googling lol. Yesterday and two.
Which browsers? Right. Mozilla Firefox is the best offering, and I think it's the best browser anyway. I mean, a lot of people like Chrome, but I don't like Chrome because it's not open source, and it spies on you because Google. So, Mozilla Firefox, definitely. Web-based browsers like Chrome, and like other ones that are made for Linux, like Midori or Vivaldi or Brave, they will work to an extent. Some of them don't work at all. Chrome doesn't work at all for some reason in terms of accessibility. It works on Linux, but you can't access it. Things like Midori, which is made for Linux, is accessible, but the problem is it only reads links and form controls and stuff that isn't text. So if you're trying to read an article, well, screw you, because it's not going to work. It's not accessible. So definitely stick with Mozilla if you want any remote way to use a computer properly.
Rodney Shane Jackson replied, David, I know with Linux it comes with Mozilla Firefox. Yesterday at 6:42 p.m.
That's what I just said.
Michael Buckland replied, time for another big reply. Linux, I'll get searching, as my knowledge is limited about Linux, but I believe they merged with the Sonar Linux distro a while back and Linux isn't being maintained. Don't quote me on that, though. Jonathan Nadeau heads up this project. He's been blind since 14, I think, and while I have no experience with his distribution, Ubuntu is accessible enough by far. I totally trust that it provides a great experience. You should check out episode 29 of the Late Night Linux podcast where Jonathan is interviewed. Linux browsers, almost all major browsers, with the obvious exceptions of Safari, Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge, are supported, but only Firefox gives you the best accessibility, with WebKit-based browsers either not being accessible at all, or only reading links and form controls, no text. More soon. Braille screen input is bugged out right now on iOS 11.2.2. I'll be upgrading soon. Yesterday at 11 p.m.
Just to update, by the way, I have updated, and it hasn't been fixed. I thought it had been fixed, but it hasn't. The only way you can really fix it is either restart VoiceOver or restart the whole iPad, so yeah. In case you're unaware, by the way, Braille screen input allows you to, and I've pointed this out, you should go check out this thread, because I'm not going to read all these comments because they're way too long, but you should go check out this thread, because Braille screen input essentially allows you to You put it in Braille screen input mode, and then you calibrate it with your 6 fingers that you use for Braille, and then you can type in Braille on an iPad or an iPhone, but an iPhone's small enough that I probably wouldn't want to. And then it converts it into text, and you can even do contracted Braille, so if you want to type faster, it's great when it works well, because for some reason it hasn't been working very well recently.
Nicole Tedesco replied, Michael Buck and I just tried the iOS Braille screen input for the first time. I'm left wondering, why didn't they also make it an alternate keyboard that pops up for any text input? Yeah.
Very good point. One of the reasons may be because obviously a keyboard only takes up half the screen, and blind users may be a bit confused by the fact that it only takes up half the screen. So then they try and put their fingers on the top and mess it all up. I don't know. Apple does like.
Hal replied, yes, you can hook a Braille display up with a device running VoiceOver, the same as you can with JAWS or NVDA. So, an iPhone, a Mac, etc. Think my friend said he even hooked one up to his Apple TV, but he's done some crazy stuff with his technology and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he made some modifications for that. 13 hours ago,
I'm pretty sure, yeah, you'll have to jailbreak your Apple TV to do that. I'm not quite sure, but there's barely any voiceover settings, so probably.
OZM, Hal replied, oh, ellipsis, and I was going to say to a reply way up the list here. Unfortunately, a big reason JAWS crashes or has a massive hang time with apps is because they tend to like keeping the old code in and adding new stuff. My biggest example for this is how JAWS tries to load the files for Microsoft Office 2003 first. Then when that's not the reversion of Office, it loads 2007, then 2010, then 2013, etc. It does this every time you open an Office application, unless someone goes in and changes that in the JAWS scripts. 13 hours ago.
Yeah, that's annoying. JAWS, screw it.
Michael Buckland replied, iOS Braille screen input. Basically, if you're familiar with how VoiceOver works, you change your preferred grade and some other options and enable Braille screen input in the rotor settings. Then you rotate 2 fingers to activate the rotor until you get to Braille screen input. The screen will be dimmed if you can see it and VoiceOver will speak some messages. You then double tap with all 6 of your Braille fingers and start typing. Space is flick right. Enter is flick right with 2 fingers. Backspace is flick left. Backspace a whole word is flick left with 2 fingers. You can change the grade by swiping left or right with 3 fingers and lock and unlock the rotation by swiping up or down with 3 fingers. Swiping up or down with 1 finger tries to change the previous word to something else in case it was a little miscalibrated. To get out, activate the rotor again. This entire message was written in this way on the new iOS 11.2.5 and I'm pleased to report that no bugs have been encountered yet.
Yeah, bugs have been encountered. That was just a one-off.
iOS VoiceOver during setup. Yes, if you triple-click the home button in setup, it'll activate VoiceOver. If you've been through the setup already, however, and didn't enable voiceover, then you'll have to get a sighted person to look in the settings. Linux applications, yes. LibreOffice is the #1 office program in Linux, with most distributions shipping it by default. Google Docs is as accessible as it is on Windows with Firefox and NVDA, although I haven't really looked into advanced features and have mainly only used it to do things like bold, etc. Usually, I'll download my files from Google Drive, edit them with LibreOffice and then re-upload them, simply because Google Docs is quite annoying in my opinion. In terms of media, I use VLC for media playback, as it is already installed on most distros. I also use a program called Xmusic to play my music, but this is extremely simple. I'd encourage you to take a look at Refbox if you want. Something more feature-filled. iTunes isn't available right now, Apple. You should get as familiar with the command line as possible. Learn everything you can, because from a blind person's point of view, getting around in a terminal is much faster than navigating a GUI. About the only two programs I ever use are Make Terminal and Mozilla Firefox. For example, if you want more control over your music, I use a command line tool called XMMS2. It's actually what runs Xmusic. And while you can get GUIs for it, it's much simpler just to learn all of the commands and have a terminal running in the background. Hash symbol. 5 hours ago.
Don't know why there's hash symbol at the end, but I've mentioned a lot of this already, so I'm not going to go into detail. It was replying to David Moore. I don't know why that I didn't read David Moore's comment, but essentially what it said is what software is available on Linux, and this is really cool.
Something to mention. When you dual boot instead of using a VM, ellipsis, Linux will carve out a session space on your hard drive. It's a pain in the ass to resize that space if Linux is installed before another OS. If you have a VM, you define the amount of space you want to allocate, and change that as you need. Try to put that on your YouTube channel too.
Yes. If anybody knows of a good way to read YouTube chat when you can't see it, then please let me know, because it'd be really annoying to have on the Mac, and it's annoying to have on the iPad when you're trying to use the iPad. I might go grab another device here in a minute, or something like that. Everything that he just mentioned is very important. It's hard to resize partitions. Linux does it automatically for you when you install Windows, but if you don't want that...
And regarding Nicole Tedesco's previous comment from ages ago, how do you find using Visual Studio and what language do you suggest for this project? I was thinking C# symbol, but to be honest, it's completely conceptual at this point. For example, I have no idea how I'm going to install NVDA unattended for the user. Maybe if I have a look at the code, I could work out how to manually extract and copy the files from the executable, but I have no idea. Or maybe it's just a tutorial to help guide the user themselves through installing the software on their own, with the guide changing based on some options at the start that define your situation. E.g., I am a new blind user. Or I am an existing blind user. Just let me install the software I want. 5 hours ago. One reaction.
Yes. Okay. Oh, right. Right. So, I was talking about languages there. Here's the thing. I don't program for Windows. I program for Linux. One reason why I like Python, because I've never been into... I mean, Visual Basic was the first programming language I ever learned, but I never really used it. I just learned how to do it. Now I've forgotten it all. So I don't program for Windows that often. So I'll probably end up writing it in something like C#, because C#, I've been looking into it. I'll probably end up going with C# or something similar. But, however, Nicole brings up a good point, and that is that...
As a long-time software architect, I suggest we plan a little more before committing to some language and ecosystem or another.
That. Very important point. I haven't got all these ideas out yet. This is the live stream where I've been talking about all this. I haven't really discussed my views on it yet. So, yeah. I guess we'll pick a language afterwards, because that would make more sense.
Nicole Tedesco replied, Visual Studio is fine. The developers have spent a lot of time with keyboard shortcuts and versus in order to assist the visually impaired and blind. Personally, I still have a lot to learn in this regard since my vision problems, which are ultimately temporal lobe problems, are recent and I am just getting up to speed on all of this. 3 hours ago, 0...
Good. I didn't actually read that.
Nicole Tedesco replied, Michael Buck and I am usually pretty goal-driven when planning out software
I've read that. I'm not going to talk about
Nicole
it.
Tedesco replied, we should set up a Git repository and work through the
I've set up a Git repository. I've shown you it.
Michael Buchan replied, exactly. I'll get mind mapping and researching. Michael Buchan replied, I'm pretty sure I know how to use GIF issues, so I'll set up a repository today. Not sure how much, if any, I'll get done today.
Yeah, by the way, I'll get none done today.
But I might as well at least make the repo. PM coming. Michael Buchan replied, for those who want to contribute ideas to this project, please submit them as GIF issues to https://github.com/mcb2003/blind installer/issues. Remember to tag your issues with the enhancement tag, with a link, mcb2000.
Yes, everybody go do that, please. Please add as many issues as you can. Mark them all as enhancements. I will read every single one of them and open or close them and reply to every single one of them. I'll reply to that in a minute.
Button. Kent Christie.
In fact, I'll reply to it right now because we are pretty much done with this comment thread.
Friend
so,
notification. Aussie How reply? Choose a photo or video.
Sorry about the background noise,
replied,
by the way.
C# is a nice language. Just now.
C# is a nice language. Good. I kind of know how to use it. Again, I've looked into all these languages, but I've never really programmed in them. Please take a look at what I've got, because if you're interested in Linux especially, I have done some videos about it. I've started an accessibility for blind/VR users series, which doesn't just cover Linux, but it covers a lot of Linux, because I'm very passionate about Linux and open source, and that's why I'm passionate about NVDA, because it's open source, and hopefully somebody can start working on Orca a bit more, because Orca is, I mean, yeah, it's up to date, but it really hasn't changed for a good year, 2, 3 years now, and we need it to, because we need to fix some bugs and stuff, and I'm sure there's some settings and things we could implement and change. I don't actually know what Orca is written in. I think it's C++, or maybe it's just C. But everybody, please look down in the description. There's a lot of links there, because there's links to the issues page for the GitHub. There's links to the GitHub on its own. My Twitter, which is probably one of the best places to follow me. The other one is in the Blind and Visually Impaired Support Group, which is also linked down there. And you can subscribe to this channel, please do so. Go check out Blind Computing, that's also in the description, blindcomputing.org, no spaces, well, obviously no spaces, no dashes, no caps. I'll see you next time. I hope I can do a lot of these in the future.